ready. Hold tight.
Hold on to your hats, boys.
Libos.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week.
Just what the flipping Nora are you all lot doing?
I'm still in there. I'm still right behind him.
It was just a very well thought out tactical plan by Danny.
I want to go!
I can literally feel the steam coming out your ears.
So it's like a fun little post-game snack.
The Wednesday Week! Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week. Hello from the other side edition. Tonight, joining me, I've got Stephen from the Wise Men Say podcast on what's been a couple of terrible results for Sunderland as we talk about our upcoming game on Friday night in... Stephen, welcome to the show. You all right, pal?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right, it's my absolute pleasure. I tell you what, we'll get straight into it. So, Sheffield Wednesday are playing yourselves, the Black Cats, on Friday night at Hillsborough, a place that we've not had a great amount of wins at since New Year's Day, and given the way last Friday went, not a great time of week for us to play. Also playing a team that absolutely drubbed us back in August in the reverse fixture at the Stadium of Light. How are you feeling about this upcoming fixture?
It feels huge to me now, and just off because you've just mentioned the form briefly coming into this off the back of 2 defeats. It's unknown for us this season that. You know, we previously could count on one hand the amount of times we'd lost, and then suddenly it's 2 in a row. The young players who have been absolutely outstanding for us this season, and just a pleasure to watch, look tired. And I think what we've seen from this manager throughout the course of the season is he only uses the same 12, 13, 14 players. And I think that's because he perceives anybody below that not quite to be up to the level that he wants them to be. And it's left us in a bit of a position now where some of these young players are looking a bit burnt out. So I feel like it's a really important game for us to try and get a win. As daft as that might seem to fans of teams like yourself, where we're just sitting nicely in that playoff position and it's looking very unlikely that we're going to fall out of it. But here we are. Suddenly we feel a little bit pressure to win this.
It's been a good season for Sunderland, especially given how last season went. There's been some great push forward there from yourself, some great improvement based on last season. If you go back right to the summer, is this where you thought you were going to be? Honest answer?
Absolutely not. No, I was the most. We did our pre-season predictions, and I was the most positive out of the group of people we have involved in the podcast, and I went for 7th because I felt I gave the young players the benefit of the doubt, because we finished last season terribly, as you know, by when you come up and played us on the last game of the season and stayed up. I give them the benefit of the doubt that because they're so young, they're going to improve year on year. So while we didn't make a host of signings, I was quite confident that would happen. However, we finished that season so badly. I was thinking we're probably going to be more thereabouts than there this season. And I think 4 games into the season, that opinion completely changed when I saw just how good some of these young players are. Now we have a manager who seems to have the balance right for this squad.
Very much so. I mean, in terms of February games played and points taken, there's an element of I don't know. I don't want to say you're kind of dropping the ball because like you're 4th in the championship, right? You're well into the playoffs with like a 11-point lead over your 5th place rivals in West Bromwich Albion. You can't be worried too much about not making the playoffs, right?
I don't know. I think it would take an almighty collapse for that to happen. Which the last quarter of last season suggests it could happen when the disaster that was Mick Bale came in, and then the caretaker managers couldn't really get us back to where we were prior to that appointment. My concern is that we've always had this at the back of our mind, automatics is a possibility, and there were some results we were really thrown away. Now, I know every team has these stories, and every fan of every team would look back and say, well, we absolutely threw away 2 points there. We threw away a point there. But some of them have been so obvious for us. You know, the 2 fixtures in between Christmas and New Year, for example, conceded 2 stoppage time goals. So got 1 point instead of 4. And, you know, we've only took 1 point from Plymouth this season. And I think some of that was complacency. And you think, you know, if they just went in with the right attitude of those games, there's more points you've dropped. But like I said, every team's got it. And I think what's happened now with our latest defeat is it's kind of put closure on that a little bit now, where I feel
this was the Hull City game, right? At home.
Yeah, so we lost at Leeds, which you know, we were winning 1-0, and after defending so well for 80 minutes, decided to just gift them 2 goals, which was really frustrating. But then we followed it up with a defeat at home to Hull, first home defeat of the season. So again, some perspective required. We've been excellent at home this season, but what that's done is it's brought some closure, I think, at least on. It was always just like, you know, we could do it without maybe really believing that we could reach the top 2. And I think what this has confirmed to me is that we are comfortably, or we've had a much better season than the sides below us. And let's take it from the viewpoint that everybody's fit and everybody's playing well, because I know form comes into it. So take form out of the equation. I think what I've come to realise now is that we are the 3rd or 4th best team in the league, comfortably better than the sides below that. Not quite as good as Leeds in particular. Sheffield United and Burnley, I think if things went differently, we could have competed with both of those 2. And I think that's the danger that comes with that, is that, you know, like you said, it's unlikely we're going to drop out the playoffs now. So hey, do you keep your motivation up? What you're playing for now? Because there's always a side that comes into the playoffs. We did it a couple of years ago when Tony Mowbray was manager. We won like 5 out of our last 6 games, ended up in the playoffs on the last day of the season. The whole place was on a high. We played Luton Town, who finished about 12 points ahead of us, and we beat them in the first leg. And had we had any fit defenders in the second leg, we probably would have went through to Wembley. That's what can happen. If suddenly we are just coasting along and bobbing along and we've got nothing to play for, and then look how many teams are fighting for 5th and 6th place at the minute. I think it goes down to Preston, who are in about 15th, arguably, who are like 9 points away. So, you know, there's a lot of movement going to happen, and you're probably going to get a situation where, again, the last day of the season, you're going to get movement like there was a couple of years ago. Somebody's going to come bouncing into that playoffs, full of energy, full of enthusiasm. And that will be a concern of mine if we can't match that, because we've just been coasting by that point.
The most notable team I can remember that hit the form towards the end of the season was Blackpool when they went up to the Premier League. They came out of 10th, 11th, and just sailed in and ended up getting promoted. And there's always a team that does that, but there's also a point where teams fighting for the playoffs, maybe outside the top 3 and probably including yourself, if I was being belligerent, you know, I don't think Leeds, Sheffield United, and Burnley are going to have a dip, but you always, at the back of your mind, you've always got that in your head that there's going to be one. And do you feel like you're in yours now with this month?
I hope so, because like I said to you earlier, my concern is that the players are starting to become a bit burnt out. I hope it is form, because if it is burnout, that suggests it's more than form, which would be my concern. We've got to be really creative now and clever with the way we rest some of these young players, because our squad, as I've just mentioned before, he only uses the same 12, 13, 14 players. So clearly our squad's not good enough to maintain the form we've showed this season if we just take 4 of them out the side suddenly. So he's going to have to do it one at a time, and he's going to have to be clever with it. But we saw this with J Bellingham in particular last season, who was absolutely excellent until around this time. And he was just burnt out. He played every minute of every game, and he was really, really, you know, his standards were really low, which was never, you know, blame was never attached to him for that. We could all just see that he was knackered and he's a young kid and he needed a rest. And the same thing's starting to happen again now. Chris Rigg in particular has gone from just lighting this division up to just, you look at him and he's 17-year-old and you just think he needs to come out, take him out. But then you could argue Dan Neil needs a rest. You could strongly argue Wilson Isidore up front needs a rest, because we don't really have another centre forward fit. So he's doing all of the running and playing everything. And we've got a couple of young fullbacks. You know, these players need rests, and you can't do it all at once. So
did you strengthen much in January?
No. It was a bit annoying because we let a couple of our backup strikers leave. Now they weren't doing great for us, so I can't say that you were too disappointed in relation to what they were offering us. But what it's done is, I've just mentioned that Isidore's now got no backup as a centre forward, and we went out and got Dan's on loan from Liverpool, who is very, very highly rated. And then in his medical, they picked up an injury, and he's now back in Liverpool undergoing treatment. The pessimist in me wonders if we'll even ever see him, and that's pretty much. Wow. That was all we did really in terms of incomings. Now we have had a few players injured who are starting to come back, so the old cliche, hopefully like new signings. Lefebvre was the main one, sorry, but he's now injured as well. He's picked up a hamstring injury. He's been brilliant for us, but he's been playing out on the left and he's cleaning out a winger. But he's so good. He's way better than Championship level. So he's been doing a job there for us. We had a couple of left wingers who's been on the touchline, on the sideline, injured. Romain Mundle's one, Tommy Watson's another, and it's been very much a collective hope one of these guys will get back, and then Lefebvre can move in the middle, take Rig out, give him a break, and then typically in Sunderland fashion, Romain Mundle came back on Saturday off the bench, but he replaced Lefebvre, who's now injured. So they were like ships passing in the night, and now we're not going to see that balance in the side. And he's got some decisions to make, really, about how he does that.
Sounds like you've got some concern in your voice. Is that because, losing mentality?
I'm a Sunderland fan.
Losing mentality and getting ahead to players. Now, you can hold your head up high losing against Leeds in this league, right? You can look back and go, look, we gave it the best. We gave it the best. They're just too good in this league, right? They are. It's a bit of a travesty of football, as much as I hate to admit it, that they're playing Premier League football and Southampton are not, on paper. But then to go and lose to Hull City at home, it's weird how a loss like that can cause panic stations amongst the dressing room, and then it can make the fans start wondering, Christ, is this going to fall to bits?
Yeah, that's why at the very start of this conversation, when you asked me about how big I thought the game was on Friday, that's why it feels like a big game to me now, because we're in this terrain that we're not used to now. Like I said, we hadn't lost back-to-back games all season. Now we have, and you know what? It could be that we turn up Friday, we turn you over. The kids put on a display, as I've done so many times this season, and fans of other, or your fans and your listeners are thinking, I thought he was being a bit dramatic the other day when he was talking there. Their side is sitting like comfortably clear of the playoffs. What's he got to moan about? But you can only speak when you watch things on a game-to-game basis, can't you? And I think the striking thing really with that is because the point of comparison is what happened to Bellingham last season, and this is a terrific player who was just clearly burnt out, and there's just the signs are starting to show that, and for the rest of them as well. It's such a young and exciting team when it clicks up. And what I will say is, if your home form's not great, and you feel compelled to come and attack us and get on the front foot, that would suit us, I think.
Yeah. I just wish that was the case. You know what I mean? Something to get the crowd up and get them just dancing and singing. Friday night's a difficult event anyway. People are knackered from work. You know what I mean? All the rest of it.
Do you know what? It's one of these cliches people come out with and say Hillsborough under the lights or wherever under the lights.
Yeah.
And generally, midweek games have the worst atmosphere. It's like we always get pelters when footage comes out of the stadium like midweek, because there's like the ground's like 3/4 full or half full. But the problem is, it's like, we've got a big fan base, but a lot of them don't live in Sunderland. We've got there are more people from outside of Sunderland who come to the match and live in Sunderland. So we've got a big following in County Durham, for example. And the transport links are just not great. And there's so many things that goes into a midweek game that just makes it rubbish for me. I mean, playoffs are an exception, obviously, as we've both remember of a couple of years ago. What those occasions can be like. But generally, I think they're just a bit crap midweek games, aren't they?
Yeah, no one's putting annual leave in for a Tuesday night tie against Swansea or Blackburn or something like that. Exactly. You know what I mean? Let's go back to August. Let's go back to the first game we played. Now, for Sheffield Wednesday, we had our first game of the season. we absolutely battered Plymouth. A couple of games later, we played you guys away, and we were thinking, tell you what, we're all right. We're good. We're good. We're really good. And it was humbling, to say the least. The team since have dug deep and come out the other side of it. Danny's quite well renowned for coming off the back of a pasting with a decent win. The trouble is, we know every about 5 or 6 games there's a pasting coming, and we had one last week. We had one against Burnley.
Did deserve that though.
No, a lot of people have said that. It wasn't. If you're an XG guy, apparently we had the edge, but you've got to take your chances and all the rest of it. Football's a lot bigger than stats, I believe. But that game specifically, Josh Windass was earmarked as a guy that kind of fluffed his lines 3 times for your goals. That must have been a game for you guys as well, where you went, hang on a minute, we're going to have a good season. You must have thought that at the time.
Yeah, because I think what we didn't really know much about this incoming manager, and we'd known that he was selected. And let's be real, he was about 4th choice.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of revisionism going on around that appointment.
Yeah. A lot of deleted tweets.
Yeah. But I think, what we did know is that he had a really good track record with young players, and we needed somebody to get the balance right. So Tony Mowbray had us on the front foot playing breathtaking football at times, but there was never a plan B. There was never, we were incapable of seeing out a game at 1-0. We just had to keep attacking. Now, that's great as a fan in some ways, and the ground was bouncing and it was full and people were like, this is great. But realistically, we were always going to fall short of having a serious challenge for promotion, I think, although we did sneak into the playoffs, as I've just said there. And then they brought in Mick Beale and inexplicably sacked Tony Mowbray, really, when we were just outside the playoffs.
Yep.
And Mick Beale was the opposite, and he tried to make them really functional and hard to beat. And of course, the opposite happened. And he put, the shackles were put on these young players. Now, what we needed was somewhere in
It's because he was Southern, mate. It's because he had the wrong accent, apparently, right?
Yeah, of course. All that gets labelled like here, doesn't it? Yeah, and it was just dreadful to watch. And he put the shackles on these young players, and what we needed was somewhere in the middle. And I think by the time we beat you, we won our first 4 or 5 games, I think, of the season. But I think that one was the one where we think, you know what? This guy's got the balance right, because we haven't been wide open at the back. But when we attack, we're being clinical and we're being quick. And that's still the case. It's kind of, when we counter-attack, we move the ball really quickly. Some of those young attacking players move the ball really quickly. What's happened now is the confidence is just eked out a little bit. So I don't think that ruthlessness is there. But yeah, that was a point where we were looking, thinking, you know what, there's at least a playoff campaign on here.
I see what you're saying about this game. Obviously, on the back of 2 defeats, albeit one against Leeds, you could look at this fixture at Hillsborough and go, do you know what, this needs to stop the rot, as it were, as we discussed before. And then when you look forward to March, you guys have got Coventry away, a team that under Frank Lampard, quite annoyingly, have actually picked up a run. Because I looked at that sacking of Mark Robbins and went, what are you doing? And then they got Frank Lampard, and I went, what are you doing? And it's kind of working out for him a little bit. And I'm, you know what I mean?
Still on Frank, I see something in him, the way he talks, that I think there's he gets a lot of stick, doesn't he? But circumstances have gone against him, I think, in certain jobs.
Yeah,
the second of Robbins seemed ridiculous because he did such a good job there.
But you must be looking at that fixture thinking, I don't fancy that one unless we stop this rot off. Because going to Hillsborough's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an absolute banter fest. Don't get me wrong. And in fact,
last season.
Nah. It's but like there's an element of like, you'll probably score first and we'll probably score late on in the second half, and it's going to be a 1-1 draw, like most games have been at home this calendar year. I mean, how do you feel like it's going to go?
I
mean, be as vociferous as you want. I appreciate.
Yeah, my instincts are telling me it's going to be a draw, and that's not me sitting on the fence in any way, shape, or form. I actually feel like we've hit a bit of a slump, and I would wonder if so. Let's say the story of the game goes as you've just said, and Sunderland get a goal first, and that would suit us because you would have to come out at us, and we play much better on the counter attack. We prefer that, and I think there's a reason our results have dipped when we've played against some of the lower teams, and we're expected to have the ball more. So let's say that happens, and then you do get a late-ish second half goal. do you think psychologically any side would run themselves in the ground to better that, or would they both take it?
Nah, I think if you ask a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans, what about a draw, lads? We'll go, yeah, do you know what? We'll take it.
Well, exactly. And I think, off the back of 2 defeats, would the Sunderland players think the same? I think quite possibly.
Yeah, because our form's not been banging of late. You know what I mean? We've got over the last, especially this calendar year, we're becoming two points of the playoffs a couple of times, and every time we get to the vinegar strokes, as it were, we fluff our lines significantly, and then all of a sudden now we're in not free fall, but there's a huge pack, as you said earlier on. We can go down to about 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and they're still looking at playoffs going, hey, lads, we're only 3 points off playoffs, because you expect everybody else around you to lose, right, when you look at the league, don't you? But I assume, normally this is the point of the show where I say to you, like, how do you feel like the season's going to finish? But I feel like you're already in it. I feel like that's where you're going to finish. Or do you feel like you could challenge Burnley, Sheffield United, Leeds?
You never say never. Like if Sheffield United and I'm still waiting for Burnley to blow up, by the way, because I'm just not convinced at any time I've seen them play. But they keep saying that to
I keep saying the same about Sheffield United. I'm waiting for that to fall to shit.
But you know what, though, we talk about this now pod all the time. Like if we're watching Sunderland, unfortunately, because of who we are, get most of our 3 clocks taken off us. So it gives us the opportunity to go and watch other teams, and Sheffield United is an obvious one for us to do. We've said the same. You seem to watch them; they seem to be crap, but they seem to find a way to get
out results.
Yeah, and we don't do that and can't do that, and that's not who we are. That's not our identity. So, you never say never. If suddenly those 2 teams lose 2 or 3 in a row and we win, then it's back on, isn't it? You just got to forget about Leeds at this point, I think. But
absolutely.
To answer your question, I think I'd be amazed if we didn't finish 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Now, I can't let you go without asking you about Job in the middle of the park. He's got a famous surname now. There's an element of people are going to start, the inevitable comparisons and all the rest of it. Has there been? I think I saw some rumors back in January about him going to a bigger club and all the rest of it. Do you feel like he's there yet, or do you feel like he's got a bit to learn, or do you feel like a mid-table Premier League team might snap him up to give him those bits you learn?
I think if we don't get promoted, he'll go. I think his family are really careful with where he goes and what they move, and they selected Sunderland for a reason, because he had a relationship with some of the coaching staff who were already here and they trusted him. So we kind of got lucky with that one, really. I mean, £2 million we paid for him is ridiculous. And I think, but that's not just him. So that's my biggest concern. And this is interesting, Dan, because I'm going off on a tangent here, sorry, but we were talking there about, when you're mentioning Leeds and saying you see Leeds not in the Premier League and you see Southampton in the Premier League, you could see a Bournemouth, you could see other sides like that.
Yeah. Sunderland
haven't been in the Premier League now for 8 seasons, and this is the longest time in our history we've went without being in the top flight. Wow. That's a big old history. And so that really is where we should be as well. Although it probably doesn't feel like that to outsiders who've seen us fall to League One and stuff. But if you go back and you look at our positions in the hierarchy of English football, this is an anomaly. The last 7 years, it's usually bottom half of the top division, playoffs at least in the Championship level. And what this is creating now is an issue where, because we've had a good season, let's say we fall just short. And I'm hoping we don't. I'm hoping we go up. And I think we've got a good chance, as much as anybody in the playoffs. But let's say we fall short, and we've had a season where we've nearly got it. The expectations there now, because the fans think, come on, it's about time we were back up in that top flight now. But the problem you're going to have is the vultures are going to come, and you've got J Bellingham.
Pick your team apart.
Yeah, well, long-winded answer to your question. Yes, I think he's ready for the Premier League, but what I was trying to say there about the way his family carefully plotted his career path, it's not going to just be anybody. There wasn't a chance in hell, for example, someone like Ipswich were going to get him, because there's just no way he would do that. I think they would make the right move for him, I think. But I don't think it's just him. I think Chris Rigg would possibly be taken by a Premier League team. I think Premier League teams might be looking at Wilson Isidore. I think Dan Neil, who has been easily our best player in the last 2 or 3 months in midfield. He's like 22, but he feels old now in comparison. But I think his career trajectory is the Premier League as well. You've got our right back Try Hume, who's linked with Fulham in January. His career path trajectory is the Premier League. So there's a few of them, and I think if we don't get promoted, I seriously think we might lose 4 or 5 of them, and that leaves us in a bit of a predicament, because then you've got a fan base who want a serious promotion challenge, and all your best players have gone. Where do you go from there? So it feels like there's a bit of pressure on it, I'll be honest.
Yeah, get promoted or lose him, essentially, or you know what I mean?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, last one, I promise. And I'm sorry to end
It's
it
fine.
on such
Plenty
a
of time,
note.
it's fine.
Your goal is coming under some flack for the amount of weight he's put on and how he's playing. I mean, what? How many stotty cakes is he having? What's going on there?
I don't think the goalkeeper top does him any.
It's doing him no favors, is it?
It's not, because it's a short sleeve, tight fitting kit, and that, you know, I think there's something in that. But yes, when he came out this season, I think everybody in the stand were like, "Oh, he's put on a bit timber, hasn't he?" Listen, he's a good goalkeeper.
He's the epitome of when my nan would buy me a massive jumper and go, "You grow into it." You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's grew into it all right.
Yeah.
I think he's a good keeper. He's a good championship keeper. He is. And I think what Sunderland fans need to remember is we've had some absolute stinkers in goal over recent years. And if you could have given us somebody like him then, you would have snapped anybody's hand off for it. He's had a couple of mistakes. What keepers don't make mistakes? If he didn't make mistakes,
ours, and we love him.
If he didn't make mistakes, he'd be in the Premier League, wouldn't he? So generally, he's one of the better keepers in the division. I think going through a little bit of a wobble, but I have faith that he'll turn it around.
I love it. Stand by you, man. Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure, pal. If you stay on the line, I'll wrap this up. Thanks a lot for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's the Wise Man Say podcast, available on all your podcasting outlets. See you later.
Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday Week, bringing you football analysis.
He came in. I think he scored a goal.
Bringing you banter.
Yeah.
Bringing you responsible life hacks.
Met you wonderful souls at 10 a.m. for some shots.
The Wednesday Week. 1, 2, 3, 4 live. Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there, podcasts, etc.
The Wednesday Week 24-25 season. Join us.
Put on your podcast.